Welcome to my ranking of every Final Destination opening disaster, and that does include the new movie Final Destination Bloodlines. If you're a fan of the franchise, you know that every movie starts off with this jaw-dropping premonition that sets the stage for everything coming forward. So today, we're ranking them worst to best. From freeway pileups to roller coaster mayhem to collapsing bridges, we're just gonna dive right into these movies and talk about why each opening sequence deserves the spot that it gets. Now this is just my ranking, feel free to agree with me, disagree with me, but make sure you leave your rankings down in the comments. I'd love to see your takes. Now I'm ranking these based on a mix of creativity, shock factor, how intense the disaster actually feels, the visual execution and effects, and how well the sequence actually sets the tone for the rest of the movie. So with that in mind, let's get into the chaos. Coming in last place is the Final Destination, the NASCAR Speedway scene. Look, I have so many issues with this scene because the idea of this happening is a pretty solid idea. I don't think it's the best idea you could come up with, but it's a good idea. But the execution is god-awful. You have to remember that this movie came out during the peak of the 3D gimmick that was in pretty much every movie. The only problem is a lot of other movies did it a lot better. So this movie, when you don't have the 3D glasses on, the gimmick, the way that they film the movie isn't there. So you see these visuals that look completely out of place, and you can tell that they're trying to come out of the screen, but if it's not working with the glasses, it doesn't work at all. So you have that, right? You have that gimmick working, but then you also have some of the worst CGI I've ever seen. The movie starts, the premonition, the setting starts with very realistic stuff. I don't think there's much CGI at all involved. But when the scene starts going and the chaos starts, the CGI shows itself and it is awful. So you have the mix of the bad CGI taking you out of what's happening, but then you have the 3D gimmick that's taking you out of it even further. It just doesn't work. The sequence doesn't work. You don't really care. And it's just a very generic mass chaos thing, and I don't think any of it works. Number 5 is Final Destination 3, the roller coaster crash. Now, I remember this scene being a lot different when I first saw it years and years ago. I went back and rewatched all of these opening sequences, so it's a fair shot. And this one didn't really do it for me. It's scary, right? We all love roller coasters, or most of us do. I love roller coasters, so I always thought that this was a terrifying situation. And it is a terrifying situation. All of these are. But this one, you're so secluded to a roller coaster cart, and yes, people are flying off and everything like that, but you can't get that creative with it. Like, there's just not enough there to really give us what the franchise is capable of. So even though it lives in my head as one of the best opening sequences, when I went back and rewatched it, it wasn't that good. Now the performances during that scene, they were pretty good. You saw the fear in their eyes. They did as much as they could with what they were given. But looking at the bigger scope of what the franchise can do and what we've seen them do even before this one just doesn't have enough going for it to really be high up there on this list. Coming in at number 4 is Final Destination Bloodlines, the tower collapse. This sequence, this opening premonition had potential written all over it, right? And for the most part, I enjoyed myself. I thought what they did with what they had, they made it work. But we're going back to number 6 on this list. What was the problem with the 6th one, besides everything? The CGI. This movie, I don't know why. I don't know why in this day and age. Keep in mind, the movie before this, Final Destination 5, came out in 2011, right? Pretty big gap. We have made strides in the film industry, in technology, of what we can do with what we are given, right? I know this isn't the biggest budget movie, but I mean, come on. The CGI in that opening scene took me out of it. And that's really my only complaint, my only real big complaint about this premonition, and what really holds it back for me. The CGI is there from the jump in places that I don't really think it was needed. And I just think that if this was more practical or even just better CGI, this thing would have been so much higher on my list, because of the chaos that ensues up in the sky in that tower is insane. People falling through the glass floor. We have a fire going. We have the tower collapsing. It is absolute carnage. People are on fire. It is insane. And that's what we want in the Final Destination movies. So they did a great job at that. But every time, and it sucked me in, when the chaos starts going, I was in it. And I forgot about the CGI for the most part, with all the close-ups. But then once it zooms out and it shows you a little bit more of the what's going around the tower, and just when you saw the CGI, it took me out of it again. So I'm in it and I'm out. I'm in, I'm out.
Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
So like I said before, this thing had potential written all over it. This thing could have been maybe even a top 2 for me, but the CGI just holds it back so much for me. I don't know if I'm alone in that. Let me know in the comments if that CGI was distracting for you or what you thought about that, please, because I want to know if I'm not alone in that. So yeah, as far as this opening sequence goes for Bloodlines, I was kind of disappointed. Once again, Carnage was great, everything was great, the potential was there, but that CGI was some of the worst CGI I've seen in recent memory. This was so distracting, and I just hate that a movie that was as good as Bloodlines ended up being, that the opening sequence, the iconic thing of this franchise, just really drug the overall movie down for me. Still a great movie, really enjoyed it, but that sequence, that wasn't it. And cracking in the top 3 is Final Destination, the plane explosion. This is where it all began. This is where the paranoia started. This is where they turned something that everyone was doing, you know, nothing out of the ordinary, it's just a plane ride. It turned it into a literal fear. People are afraid of flying all the time, right? The takeoff, the turbulence, but when you start to take off, when you're in the air, when you land, there's so many factors that people find flying scary. And that idea that they used for the very first movie, that worked so well because it aged so well. It was scary then, people are scared of it now. It's a thing and it's not going away. But then you add the chaos of being trapped in this very small confinement, kind of similar to Final Destination 3 with the roller coaster. But the difference here is that they are able to do so much more with the plane. There's an explosion on the side, people are getting sucked out, there's chaos inside, people are burning, it's insane, right? But they're trapped in this confined space, and that's what makes it even more scary. And they're up in the sky. I mean, every way and every which way you think about this is scary. It's mass chaos, and a lot of them are mass chaos, but this one just does it better, right? And it gives you time to get to that point in the movie to where there are relationships that are established. There are people that you don't like already off the bat, and there are people that you do like off the bat based on Devon Sawa and his character because it follows him. And first of all, Devon Sawa sells it the entire time when everything's going to hell, plus when he wakes up from the premonition and his performance there on the plane and when he gets off the plane. He really sells it. He sells the fear. He sells what he believes. There might be others in this franchise that do that just as good, but in my eyes, no one has done it better than him in this franchise. So yeah, the plane sequence in Final Destination is the oldest premonition in the series. It's 25 years old, but it's aged so well with the concept, with the visuals, with the acting. It just kind of, it was that magic in a bottle type of thing. And I think that's why this series got to where it is today of being a actual franchise, how it got brought back with Bloodlines. Everything started with this. And it's because they did it so well. And coming in at number 2 is Final Destination 2, the Highway Pileup. Now, I know a lot of you are gonna be mad at this. I know a lot of you have this as your number 1 pick, and I'm not gonna argue that. This scene is probably the most iconic scene in the entire franchise. Not even individual people dying, I'm talking the entire thing. And rightfully so. When I saw this movie, I was in middle school. Right? I was in middle school, I wasn't driving. But after seeing what happened on that highway, I was like, okay, I got a few years, I don't need to be driving right now. And now every time, even now, you see a truck with logs on it, immediately, seconds, like milliseconds, you start thinking about this scene. And I think that is what makes it so iconic. It makes it a staple of this franchise, and it does virtually everything perfectly. Now, as far as my biggest complaints of these movies on this list, it has been the CGI, and this opening premonition virtually has none. You see the logs hitting the ground and those are flying, and that kind of looks a little shoddy. That is the CGI. But then as far as the fire goes, not really sure about that one either. But I'm talking about the entire thing. There's nothing about this scene, there's nothing that really pulled me out of it and being like, hey, that looks a little off. Even by today's standards. I just watched it. It doesn't look bad in the least. And it adds that authenticity to it of how fast things are happening. It's not the longest premonition by any means, but it is authentic and it instills fear in you and it's iconic and it just does everything perfect to a T. And coming in at number 1 is Final Destination 5, The Bridge Collapse. Now I know a lot of you are not gonna agree with this, but that's completely fine. Upon a rewatch of the entire series, this opening sequence does it for me. The way that the carnage is shown to you, the chaos is shown to you up close. They're jumping over cars. There's cable snapping and hitting people across the way. The bridge is actually collapsing, and it's insane. It's insanity. But the added layer that this does so well is it zooms out. It gives you a bird's eye view of what's happening, which adds more to the effectiveness of this scary scenario. Plus, leading up to this scenario, you start to learn and you start to you start to learn about these characters and their dynamics. So, once again, you don't really care about any of them, but you start to kind of build these relationships with, okay, these people are together, we don't like that person, that dude's weird, all this stuff, right? So it just adds a little bit more to it to add stakes to it. Once again, you don't care, but it does enough to make that a actual part of the sequence. Now, I'm not saying that this is perfection, because it's not perfection. There is still remnants of this idea that we have to have 3D effects in it. It's just not blatantly in your face like the Final Destination. That one was that was too bad. This one does have it, but it's so kind of like spread out throughout the sequence that it's not distracting. You notice it, but it doesn't ruin the experience for you. And another thing that this movie does that I think just worked so well for me is actually just how long the sequence actually is. I didn't go out and time it, so I don't know if it's the longest in the series, but it felt like it was the longest. And by doing so, they were able to do the pan out, the zoom in multiple times to show us exactly just how bad it is, not just with the main characters, but just for everyone involved. But then there's a shot in this opening sequence where the main character is trying to get his girlfriend across this beam onto the other safe side of the bridge because there's a massive gap, so she's crawling. And the movie takes its time and it zooms in and it kind of lifts up. So you see from the top down, we see her crawling on the beam and we see the water below. Still incredibly tense, but it gives you time to think and to breathe and to take in exactly what you just saw leading up to that point, but then it slowly kind of goes back into the chaos after that. So it's a weird thing, but it worked. It gave you a chance to breathe, it showed you the chaos of what's happening, and I just don't think that any other entry in this franchise did it better as far as the execution as this movie. Now, I know that that's probably a hot take, and I'm sure that my list overall probably had a few hot takes in it, but make sure you let me know what your list is of these opening premonitions down in the comments so we can talk about it. Make sure you like the video if you found this interesting so I know to make more videos just like it. But overall, thank you for watching my video, and I will catch you in the next one.